Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. We got Nick Miller here with us tonight, absent of Matt Anderson and Miles Gorham. They had other things going on. So, Nick, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, Ryan. And those guys are missing out. We have a crucial matchup against the very dangerous Chicago Bears coming up this week.
Yeah, I love to talk about it. Let's get to our sponsors here real quick. So, this episode tonight is brought to you by Lake Monster Brewing, Eastside Jiu-Jitsu, and That's Badass Wood Art. Remember to go to that'sbadasswoodart.com. And I believe the promo code CT Pocket is still in effect for 10% off. So go check out their work. If you can see, let's see if I can do this right above me here. That's a Randy Moss one here. You got to check it out. They have a lot of cool stuff. Even if you're not fully into the sports stuff that they have a lot of funny stuff from like The Office and things like that. So Luis is great. Go check it out. And enough. So let's stay right in just because a lot of content to go over in the next little bit of time that we have here with you today. So number one, I want to kind of backtrack here a little bit. So Miles and Matt, they did their Monday morning show, so they kind of already rehashed some of that, but I never really got a chance to talk to you. I know we were in our game day chat a little bit, but I honestly was two sheets to the wind, playing, do it from a golf trip and stuff. So I was trying to recover from that, and I wasn't really active on the chat.
And were you have you recovered from the Red River shootout yet? Or are you?
I'm not even drinking tonight because my liver is hurting still bad from that. Yeah, no, that was a big win. But yeah, so thoughts on the Chiefs game. It obviously this one didn't go our way, but positives from the game, negatives from the game. Like what was your overall thoughts here?
Well, I would say it's a lot of the same that we've already seen, so far this season. You had the Vikings shooting themselves in the foot a lot, self-inflicted errors that really set up the team to take a step back and really lose an opportunity to beat the world champions in your own, stadium. And if they had won that game, it really turned the tide on the season. But it's always tough when going through a game like that. There's not moral victories to find some silver linings. But I would say the offensive line, I think there was a few plays in which Chris Jones got home, or I think there was the one where there was a free rusher on Kirk's, probably some miscommunication errors. But besides for that, going up against that front, I was a lot more concerned about how that interior offensive line was going to hold up. I thought it was going to be a much bigger factor in the game. So I think, I want to see some more consistency, moving forward. But I really think the offensive line has taken a step forward this year. And even Ed Ingram, who has been, I know, the bane of the fan base this year, and including last year, a lot of complaints. I think he had literally over a 70s in both run and pass grade from PFF coming out of the game. So if he can, continue to take that step forward and improve his game, that's looking like it could work out in the long run. And kudos to the Vikings for being patient on that. So that I thought was positive. I thought Jordan Addison, played really well. And, I think both Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins said after the game that there were some opportunities for Kirk to hit him downfield that they didn't take advantage on. And so, obviously a negative from the game would be the Justin Jefferson injury. And we'll talk about that, but it'll be really interesting to see how he steps up moving forward in the next few weeks. And so I would say that those are two of the big positives that I took away from that is the emergence of Jordan Addison and the continued, I think, improvements throughout the year from the offensive line. What were your takeaways on the positive side before we get into the negatives, which are plenty?
Yeah, we all know I like to be negative, huh? No, so positively, yeah. I mean, I was going to say the same thing. I thought the offensive line played pretty well, honestly. And I think it's been since Dalton Reisner has joined the team that that whole interior has played better. Now, are they perfect? No, I think Ezra had a pretty horrific miss that led to either a sack or a rush pass that ended up not being a quality play. Ed Ingram, like he's going to have one here or there. Bradbury was kind of in and out that game. I think he got pulled.
I think he only ended up missing one or two plays, and that was for like a concussion protocol. Other than that, I think Yeah, I don't think it was his back, which I think is a good sign moving forward for him.
Huge sign, and which is still so funny to me. Like 2 years ago, I'm like begging to get this guy off the field,
right?
Begging to get this guy onto the field. It's It's just incredible. So from that was a positive. I thought honestly the defense played pretty well. Like obviously they weren't perfect by any means, but they also kind of got after uh, Patrick Mahomes.
Hmm.
That's a really good offensive line, and we were able to create pressure. I think that Danielle Hunter, or Marcus Davenport owes Danielle Hunter, because he basically created a sack for Marcus Davenport, and so
Right.
I
Yep.
mean, there's some positive takeaways from that perspective as well. I think the secondary, hit or miss here. You think that we're in a great position, and then they let up a play here or there, but overall, I thought the team actually looked pretty good outside of the turnover and obviously the injury to Justin Jefferson, and then obviously that slows some things down offensively. But overall, I was pretty happy with the game,
Yeah.
even though we lost.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, let's ask a real question going into this. If I were to tell you that I don't know his exact stat line, but I know it was below his averages, Patrick Mahomes would put up that stat line, and they'd only score 27, 28 points in the game. I think we would have taken that every single time going into it, and said, if the Vikings are going to win the game, they're going to put up 30 points.
Yeah,
And I think that leads in kind to into the negatives, of the game, is that the offense continues to be a disappointment, and it's the proof is right there in the pudding on not being able. I don't think they've scored 30 points this entire year. And going into the
yeah,
season, you really thought that, okay, this defense is going to be bad. There's going to be some growing pains. There's some a depth of talent there, but this offense is going to have to carry the team, and that's just not what we've seen. And there was an opportunity for this offense to carry the team and get a victory against Kansas City, and we just did not take advantage.
yeah. And the weird thing about it is, I don't think the offense is playing poorly.
No,
It's
it's not.
that
Yeah.
they're coughing the ball up. Like that's the issue. Is granted, we're driving down the field a little bit here in game. Well, no, we weren't driving down. That was the first play of the game, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was like, and you know what the interesting thing too is, I think we were talking in our little our side chat about what exactly is the problem with like the analytics and what does it shows, and I think the turnovers are a big thing, and I think Kevin O'Connell even said a lot of our fumbles this year have been in situations where your Josh Oliver's like 15 yards downfield, he's all by himself with the ball. It was a good play, and there's just not any other Vikings around in the area to help pick it up because it was a good play and he's all
Right.
by himself downfield. And so in some of those cases, it's just like been really unfortunate timing about not only when we lose the football, but where we lose the football on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when that play happened, so kind of a goofy situation, just like a side tangent here. We were planning on going to the game. I actually come back from my golf trip a little early to go to the game. I was going to take my son and his friend and my wife, and we were all going to go. And but since this whole Travis Kelsey mania stuff that's been happening
Yeah.
lately, I was like, oh, I'll put my tickets for sale for like a stupid amount, and if
Hmm.
somebody's willing to pay it, great. If not, no big deal. Well, we figure out a plan Saturday night. But again, like I said, I had been celebrating pretty hard with the Oklahoma win, and I didn't take the tickets off the website. And I'm driving home, not even thinking. I'm just
Right.
literally just trying to get home, a little hungover, all that good stuff, and tickets sold. But I didn't see a notification because I'm driving and whatnot. So get the kids in the truck or in the car. We're driving up. I'm going to put the tickets in my Apple Wallet,
Hmm.
and they say they're sold. So I'm like, oh, so we drive home, start watching the game, and the first play of the game, all right, yeah, he cops up the football, and I just yell like, thank God I'm not there. Like it's just frustrating. Like it's really hard to be a fan of a team where your team plays well, but they're making mistakes that like you teach literally fifth grade football. You're coaching this stuff of like how
Hmm.
important it is to not top up the ball. And again, we coach our kids up like the defense is going to make plays. That's just going to happen. But how many plays are they going to make where you know what I mean? Like how often should it be happening? Because it shouldn't be happening this often.
No, and it's just like the most nine-numbing things too that you said. Well, and we should get to that in a second. But it's like the miscues on like the delay of game and stuff like that that seem like you can't get the ball or the call in, in time. And it seems like we're always, hiking the ball at the last second. That's not giving the offensive line or Kirk any time to do any, adjustments to, and any pressures or things like that. It's very frustrating, as you said, just like, pee-wee level stuff that for some reason, whether it's communication of Kevin O'Connell trying to do too much, and that, that the time before the time cuts off in 15 seconds, or, Kirk not hearing or not listening, or whatever the confusion is, the fact that they're in their second year together, and it's still going on is a real big red flag.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks to all those who are listening live with us right now, and those who are listening later here as we post this podcast probably tomorrow. So leave it in the past here. Now we're kind of moving on to this week. Obviously, there's some things happening within the Vikings right now. A couple rumor mill things, a couple, obviously injuries. We have a big one that we'll talk about here in a second before we get to the Bears game. But the first thing I want to kind of bring up here is one that you already brought up earlier is Justin Jefferson's injury. So he's running a route. It seems like he pulls a hamstring, right? So walk us through, like, what does this mean? Like, how does it, like, obviously it's going to affect us big time, but in your opinion here, like, what happens from here with Justin Jefferson out for at least 4 weeks?
Yeah. So you just talk about on the field for a second. So I think that the entire offense for the Vikings, especially in the Kevin O'Connell era, is designed around getting Justin Jefferson the football. And everything they did in the offseason was with that in mind, that we're going to start getting these, really high two high safety looks. There's going to be bracket coverage on Justin Jefferson. Kevin O'Connell said a number of times, last year and heading into the offseason, that teams would literally play the defense differently against the Vikings than any other team, which made last year difficult to game plan for, because you're watching game plan the week before and they change it up completely because 18's on the field, and 18's no longer going to be on the field. And so you kind of have to think about, they're going to starting with the Bears next week. And I think the Bears have a bunch of defenders, especially in the backfield, coming back from injury. And so that's going to be different for the Bears. And the Bears are probably going to play the Vikings differently than other teams have this year. And it's going to be a learning curve for both Kirk and Kevin O'Connell to figure out, okay, how are teams going to play us now? And, are there certain advantages that we had before, where it'd be maybe a lighter box for Alexander Madison in the run game to get things going, or, for Jordan Addison, who's not going to be wide receiver one, maybe he was dealing with a lot of, man coverage or not a lot of focus his way. He's going to start getting a lot more focus, and is he going to be able to beat that? And so I think that their whole scheme, their whole approach to, how they play offense is going to be different. And that's, of course, what happens when you take, the best probably non-quarterback in the entire league out of your game plan, is that you're going to have to adjust. So it's just going to be very interesting to see how the Vikings adapt and how defenses adapt in playing them. And, I don't think there's going to be a situation where the offense is going to be better without Justin Jefferson on there. But I also think that it might free, Kirk is kind of the quarterback that just like, I want to throw to the open guy, whoever I see. That, he said this a number of times in interviews, no matter who it is, and just throw the ball there and trust them to make a play or something like that. I want to make the right read. Well, when you have Justin Jefferson, that calculus kind of changes, right? Because you need to get, the playmaker the ball. So it'd be kind of interesting to see if Kirk feels a little bit more comfortable knowing that he might not have the security blanket in Justin Jefferson to make the huge plays, but he's just probably going to throw it to the right read in his mind and see what happens from there. So I'm fascinated to see, how it looks without Justin Jefferson. I hate to see the day, because I never want to watch a Vikings game for the next decade without Justin Jefferson in it. But just for temporarily, it will be interesting to see how the Vikings handle it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it'll be, we have guys who we have faith in that are going to have to step up. Right? You draft Jordan Addison as a first rounder for this scenario, right, where either Jefferson's hurt or he is playing, and you need a 1B, or you need your number 2 guy. And there's you're seeing it quite a bit, especially last year with the Eagles, right? They have AJ Brown as their 1A, but there's games where Devonta Smith looked like the better receiver just because he was getting open or he was getting that one-on-one coverage a little bit more. And that's
Mhm.
what we wanted Jordan Addison to become. And now he's going to be stepping into wide receiver one. Hopefully his ankle injury doesn't take him away from that. And you have KJ Osborne, who is in a contract year. And I mean, let's not sugarcoat it here. He hasn't had the best year,
Yeah.
whether it's been drops or just separation issues. He just isn't playing as good, I guess, as I was hoping he would, because I thought Jordan Addison coming in was going to elevate his game, as well as having another really
Mhm.
good player in Jordan Addison here. So, and then the other guy, T.J. Hawkinson, right? Big money extension here this offseason. This is where you earn the big bucks, right? You
Right.
have to come in and you have to step up and you have to essentially be to this team what Travis Kelsey is or what Mark Andrews is to their respective teams when their top receivers are either absent or trade them away, right? In the Tyreek Hill situation. So hopefully, I think TJ steps up big time. You get
Mhm.
Jordan Addison's coming out party in a bigger way, and we can hopefully supplement, not supplant, but supplement the production that Jefferson is leaving behind. So
It will be interesting too, because I think that TJ Hawkinson's role in this offense with Justin Jefferson was in large part, if you just look at things like his average depth of target and stuff being basically 10 yards and under for most of his time with the Vikings. It's not that he isn't capable of being a little bit deeper target, even though I don't think most of those plays have worked so far this year. But now that he doesn't, his role was just to kind of take up the middle of the field and the underneath, and so that Jefferson could work the middle of the field or kind of on the deeper side and have that deeper depth of target. Now that that's not necessarily how the offense is going to be structured, I wonder if they start using Hawkinson in slightly different ways that expands a little bit more on his broader skill set than just being, kind of that big, target over the middle that draws in attention. So that's just one side thing that I'm going to be interested to see over the next few weeks if the way that we use him and like where he gets the football targets on the field will be different at all.
yeah, absolutely. So let's go to the Bears game, and then we can talk the rumor mill after that. There,
Sounds good.
but Bears game coming up here. Obviously, it's a big game for both teams, really, right? The Bears are coming off of, I think, a resurgence, so to speak, for at least their season. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying they're great. I think they're 1-4, just like we are, but they played really well the last Thursday, and um, and you look at Justin Fields, it looks like he's regained some confidence, right? Over the last 2 weeks, and they're hitting a Minnesota Vikings team without a Justin Jefferson, right? So what are some of the keys to success? Where do some key matchups that you're looking at where maybe we can exploit the Bears, and then adversely here, like what are some of the areas where that give you some pause or some concern heading into the game?
Yeah, for sure. I would bet that, the Vikings going into this, the offensive line's been playing pretty well. Our offensive running efficiency has gone up, a little bit. You have some KJ Osborne, who's a veteran at this point, and Jordan Addison, who's a first year player. And especially this first game in, I would expect. And I'm not really impressed by the Chicago Bears front seven. No, I'm not really impressed about their secondary either. But if the Vikings can get the ground game going and really kind of lean into that, and that can help open up some play action and do some things, over the top to help kind of soften, that the secondary, which is probably going to feel emboldened because they don't have to worry about 18 out there, on the field. And so I would hope that they get the ground game going a little bit because I would be surprised if the Vikings just came out and just was throwing the ball all over the field without 18 because I think that there's going to be some growing pains there a little bit as they kind of figure that out. So if they can rely on that run game, have that be the engine of the offense, and then take it from there and seeing how they can open up the pass game off of that, I think that at least from my perspective, would be a sound strategy. Um,
Sure.
on the other side of the ball, give me one second. I'm really curious to see um, how Vikings defend Justin Fields because while Bryce Young has mobility, he's coming off an ankle injury, and Patrick Mahomes has mobility, but he doesn't really like to use his legs that much when he can just do damage in the pocket, at least running down the field. How is Brian Flores' defense going to be prepared to face a guy that can break off a 40-yard run or a 60-yard run like Justin Fields has done to us in the past? So that's something I'm worried about on the defensive side of the ball for us. They are a little banged up, in their running back field, because I know that I have Khalil Herbert in my fantasy league, so I know he's out for the next few weeks. So it'll be interesting to see if they try to. They had a lot of success throwing the ball, this past week, and so can the Vikings defense contain, especially in the secondary, and can they continue to try to increase getting pressure on there, especially knowing that Justin Fields has that escapability and can get out there. Whenever we face a running quarterback, I still have PTSD from the Michael Vick, play, to win the game. I don't know how many years ago, but whenever we come up against it, just for some reason, we never seem to have the ability to slow them down. So those are probably the keys on offense is let's get the run game going, to open up the pass. And then on defense, how can we contain Justin Fields, and can we get pressure on him and not let him throw to DJ Moore and have DJ Moore pick up another 200-yard game against us?
Right. Yeah. And that's where I'm hoping that Brian Flores can maybe channel his inner Bill Belichick, right? Like over the years, Belichick's been known for, hey, I'm going to take what you do really well and take that one player and do what I can to eliminate him. And then now
Mhm.
go ahead and try to beat me with the Darnell Mooney's and the Cole Kmets of your team. Or whoever is playing at running back, whether Roshan Johnson can get back from that concussion, or if it's Donta Foreman, like beat me with those guys. I'm taking DJ Moore out of this game, 100%. And I don't know how
Mhm.
you do that, whether that's shadow coverage with Byron Murphy, with some safety help over top, but whatever the Commanders were doing wasn't working. So
Yeah.
whatever tape you watched of that, you just throw that away and say we're not going to try whatever they were doing. But I think the key here is also being able to get pressure while containing, right? So making sure that you have a Davenport if he's playing. I know he's got an elbow, and Daniel. Can you get them off the edge, right, and create pressure, but without losing that contain aspect of it, and then having a spy. Ivan Pace seems, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he is quick.
Mhm.
So getting him off and probably spying Justin Fields and or Jordan Hicks, or if you want to bring in Asamoah, who does have a little bit more speed at that position, as kind of like a specialist in this game. I know they did that last year to try to help mitigate that. Those are some ways to potentially do it, but we'll see, because I know he hasn't got a lot to run this year.
I think you're right on that, and I think Brian Flores has said before that his idea is to come up with a specific game plan for each opponent and use personnel based on that. So I think that might be a good call out. Suggest that Brian Asamoah might see more snaps than he has so far this year.
Sure. And then, yeah, offensively, I mean, their defense isn't great. Now, granted, I think the Commanders made them look better than they actually were last week. But still, I think that this defense is susceptible to big plays. I think they're susceptible to any kind of offensive pressure that we put on them, whether that's through the run game or through the passing game. So I think it's just letting Kirk get in that game and get comfortable knowing he doesn't have Justin Jefferson, knowing that, hey, I have Hawkinson, KJ Osborne, and I have a competent run game. At least it's come to life a little bit over these last couple of weeks. I want to see more Cam Akers.
Yeah.
Like I like Madison. I think he's done a okay job, but like Akers just has a little juice to him that Madison doesn't. It's almost just like, and it's not even like I don't think he's like super explosive or anything like that. But think of it as like if these guys are, on Fast and the Furious, and these cars are going fast, and then just that little jolt of Nas, right, or
Yeah.
whatever that's called.
Yeah.
Uh, like that's kind of what it's not very long, but it seems like right when he sees that hole, he hits it much harder than Madison does.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's the difference between getting an additional 3-4 yards and getting stopped for a 2-3 yard gain. And that's huge when every yard matters, especially in that run game and setting up the next play. Because yeah, a third or a second and 8, a second and 7 is a lot different than a second and 5. Like you open up so many more options there. So I kind of want to see a little bit more Akers and just letting Kirk get in his groove without Justin Jefferson, without that top dog. Now let's play ball. Let's go and play the way the offense is schemed. To your point earlier of like not focusing on Justin Jefferson as much as he probably needs to when he's in, because you have to. He's that good.
Yep. Oh, for sure.
All right. So we got some keys to success. We got some things that maybe we are worried about that hopefully they can address and take care of for us this weekend so we can get a W, because this is a big game, right? If we do not win this game, we are, dropping to just a record that's not, you're not going to be able to come back from.
Right.
And at that point, say we lose, at that point, there's some rumors going around, right? Do we start selling off some of our aging assets? I've heard Danielle Hunter as an option. I've heard Harrison Smith as an option. And then the big one, as you pointed out to me in our little chat here, is we had a reporter asking Kirk Cousins whether or not he has considered waiving his no trade clause. And to Kirk's credit, I think he answered it, as PC as possible in terms of just like, hey, I'm just focusing on the Bears and being here. That's the only thing I'm focused on. But what are your thoughts here? If we drop this game, now you have the Niners the week after that, then you have the Packers the week after that. Like, there's a decent chance that we have 1 or 2 wins by, not our bye week, but by the trade deadline. What happens? What do you want to see this team do at that point?
Yeah, no. So I dove into this pretty deep on Purple Process yesterday. So go check that out. And that I think I went 20 some minutes about all the different scenarios. But I'll give you the quick and dirty. But I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I've thought a lot about it. I think if they lose to the Bears this week, then it's done. It's just over with. I think that they realize that the 49ers is going to be real uphill climb. I think, Kevin O'Connell, believes that the team's going to win every single week. But if you're the real person that the people that really matter here are like what Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah thinks, what the Wilfs think, what Rob Brzezinski thinks about moving forward. And they just got to get Kevin O'Connell on the same page. But they're the ones that are thinking about, okay, what's that next move? Kevin O'Connell's thinking about the Bears. But so if they lose the Bears, it's done. They need to start looking at who they can sell off and how much they can get for them. If they beat the Bears, hey, if they can pull off a win over the 49ers, I'll be incredibly impressed. But I think anyone, when it comes to plotting out what happens in the next few weeks, it's only fair to think that the 49ers game is probably going to be a loss. So you're looking at potentially 2-5 there. I've said now for just kind of looking ahead, even ahead of this like Chiefs game, because it was the Chiefs. So kind of looking at expecting that to probably be a loss to the world champions, that this Green Bay game would be the swinging point of what they decide to do. I think that there is a big difference in their minds between a 2-6 team and a 3-5 team. If they beat the Bears and they beat the Packers, they get to 3-5. They're looking ahead at the next few games, thinking that they're potentially winnable. They get Justin Jefferson.
There is a few winnable games there, right?
Yeah,
like
there is.
Falcons are good. I'm not going to try to ever discredit them. They're playing really well. They're a playoff team right now,
right?
But they're beatable. The Saints, again, similarly, like haven't been lights out, but they are a good team, a really good defense. Like that's beatable. Then you get the Broncos, who I don't know what you want to even say about them. I don't want to be rude, but they got a lot of good Oklahoma players on there that I'd love to take off that team. But like outside of that, that's all about the only nice thing I'll say about the Broncos. And then you get the Bears again. So like that's a run where you can make, and then the Raiders. So like that's a run that you can make.
Yeah,
but you have to get there.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell says the opportunity is ahead of us. He believes in this team. So here's the challenge that maybe the front office is, and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah saying to Kevin, you don't want to give up on the season. You got to win 2 of the next 3 before the deadline. Because if we're 2-6, 2 days leading into Halloween when they're in the trade deadline, then I need to do what's best for the future of the team, and that's probably trading off some assets. Unless you can prove to me that there's life in this team for this year, then we're gonna have to move on. So that's my personal read on the mechanism.
Like you'd almost have to run the table, right? Like
I really, because if you go, let's say you're 2-6 at the deadline, then you have 9 games left. You probably need to get to 10-7 to really
at minimum, right?
Yeah.
So you can afford to lose 1 game with 2 Lions games, a Bengals game, and then like I said, some of these guys like they're beatable, but
You
they're
have to
also not a coin flip, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you have to go 8-1 for the rest of the season in order
yeah,
to feel comfortable like you could secure a wild card spot. So, even then, even if you're 3-5, you're saying that you got to go 7-2, which is still an incredible uphill climb. Which is why I think that there's many people saying that the season's already done at this point. I think if you look at the odds and stuff like that, I think the different analytical sites say we got like a less than 10% chance of making the playoffs at this point. It's not impossible, but yeah, I think Thomas is right. It's gotta. This is a playoff game. The season has come down almost to Kirk's quote about asking if he's going to waive no trade clause. He's thinking about going 1-0 this week. And that's what the Vikings need to be thinking about because they have no chance to make anything of the season if they don't win this week. They have to win this week. It's do or die, or done the season. But then even then, the Packers game I think is do or die, as well. They have to win two of the next
I mean,
three.
pretty much every game will be.
Yeah, or if they are 2-6 at the trade deadline and they don't unload some assets, whether it be Daniil Hunt or whatever, I will think that it's front office malpractice to not do everything you can to improve the team. But if they're a 3-5, I think that they have some deniability there.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be in their best interest to do so, even if they are 3-5. Now,
Oh,
granted,
I want to be very clear. I personally think that they've shown that they aren't ready to compete this year. Even if they make the playoffs, it's probably going to be a first round exit. I'm thinking about, starting to watch. I'm listening to Miles on Purple Daily on draft and trying to think about what the quarterbacks are going to be, moving forward. I would probably trade assets now, but knowing that this front office wants to be competitive, the Wolves want to be competitive, Kevin O'Connell still believes in this team. I think at 3-5, I think it's iffy if they decide to move on from players.
yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I think I was listening to a Bleacher Report thing today about Kirk Cousins and where some trade targets would be for him. And a lot of people in the comments were saying, like, why would you trade him? Why would you trade him? And mainly the main reason is not because we don't like him or that we don't think he's a good quarterback, but more so because he is a good quarterback and we want to start losing games at this point. So we can have a chance at a Caleb Williams, a Drake May. I don't know. There's other quarterbacks in the draft, McCarthy and Ewers and Sanders if he comes out, and Bo Nix, and
Well,
Penix. I mean, there's a lot of guys, but
well,
there's the two main guys, and that's where you want to go after. And you have to have trade assets to be able to do that, or be bad enough to be close to that pick as it is. And
well,
I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there's a couple teams that would make sense to trade him to. I think the number one would be actually Atlanta
mhm.
if they can keep stringing together some wins, and you're not going to want to trust Desmond Ritter to run that team. And I think that offense is similar enough. It is a descendant offense of the Shanahans, right? So you have a little familiarity. Obviously, there's going to be some differences there, but you got some big targets and Kyle Pitts and Drake London. You got a defense that's playing pretty well. You got a great offensive line. You have a great running back. Like, you could sell that to Kirk. You could sell, hey, Kirk, warm weather. Like, I don't know if that matters, right? But
Yeah.
you got. I think his wife's from Atlanta
Yep.
or from Georgia. They got married in Georgia. Like, kind of go back to her, close to her family. You can pitch that. You can pitch. You have a great offensive line. You're not going to get hit and beat up so much for the rest of the season like you have been here. You got some weapons to throw to. Justin Jefferson's still out, right? And then I don't think you're going to get a lot for him. Something, and then, but the big win here isn't what you're getting back in draft capital. The big win here is that what you're getting um, in losing and having that opportunity to go grab your next guy, and this is the draft to do that.
Yeah, and so I think you bring up a lot of good points. I think on the Kirk thing, I still see it. I think the Vikings should try and to do it, but I still see a low chance to do it because you got to kind of play this out here over the next few weeks. So a team's got to be in the proper playoff contention to be wanting to trade for Kirk to make it worth their while. But if they win over the next few weeks, that's typically because their quarterback played pretty well. So the top two candidates have been the Jets and the Falcons, as you said. So the Jets, Aaron Rodgers wants to come back this season. They still have Zach Wilson. Aaron Rodgers is on a contract next year. I think that it might be difficult for Kirk to want to go to a place where Rodgers is hanging over his head. So let's say Rodgers comes back, for the playoffs. Who are they going to start? He creates this crazy scenario, and he puts himself in the New York media, and I just don't think that he'd want to do that. I think you're right that the Falcons are a much better spot for all the reasons you listed, and they actually have, cap space in the future that they could sign, Cousins to, that, multi-year, $40 million a year contract that he wants. They could actually do that. The difficulty I see is, like, if you are the Falcons and let's say over the next 2 or 3 games, you win 2 of them, you're in a playoff spot. It's going to be a hard sell to your ownership and your fans to say, is Kirk Cousins that much better? Which I think he is, but I'm saying if you're a fan and you're buying into Desmond Ridder or whatever, you sold Desmond Ridder to your ownership, that you're just going to give up on your young guy to trade for Kirk Cousins, and he has to learn the whole playbook and everything, there. So because of those factors, I think that
it's almost unheard of, right?
Right. It's a tough stuff. The only way that I think the Falcons would be the only team that would plan on it, but the only way I also see it is sometime over the next 3 weeks. There's, let's say, I never wish injuries on people, but let's say Brock Purdy were to get injured or something like that, or a prominent quarterback that's competing gets injured, and the only way to save the season is to trade for Kirk. And Kirk would only cost at the trade deadline, I think, like $5.5 million to trade for. So, teams have the money this year, even if it was for a half-year rental. And then even then,
and honestly, we could even keep whatever we need to,
right.
You know what I mean? Like we could agree as part of the trade, like, hey, 3rd round pick, but if you need us to keep that salary, it's a 2nd round. And granted, that's probably too much, but that's, you could justify that as well.
Yeah. On compensation, though, I would say, so there is that Kirk is eligible to receive a comp pick if he walks away. And there is that rule.
Oh, is he? I thought he wasn't.
No. So there's that rule about 10-year veterans in the NFL or whatever that mean that they only apply for a 5th round comp pick. But there's a quarterback exemption to that rule in the CBA.
Oh, okay.
So if Kirk were to walk this season, presumably gets a big contract. If we don't cancel it out with another signing, then we'd get a 2025 third round pick from him. So we need at least to get a 3rd round pick this year, or higher, or a 2025 2nd round pick or a 2nd round pick next year at the very
least. Or
like
an equivalent, right? You could do like a 4th and a 6th plus maybe a player. And they may deem that as okay, that's, the equivalent of a 3rd round comp pick next year.
Either way, it has to be higher than a 2025 3rd, a late 3rd. For the comp pick formula for it to be worth the Vikings while. And so comp has to be there as well. And so all those factors, the Vikings should absolutely look into it, especially if they're in the scenario where they're 2-6 or even 1-7. But I just think between a team wanting to trade for him, the compensation being there, Kirk waiving his no trade clause, there's just a lot of things that have to fall right in line for it to happen. So I think really when it talks about trading at the deadline, the biggest piece asset we have that we should absolutely look into trading would be Danielle Hunter, because I don't think that the Vikings have made clear that he's going to be part of their long-term future, or they would have signed him to that extension, this offseason. So they wanted to increase their flexibility to go into it. And so, and pass rusher, unlike quarterback, is one of those positions where you can kind of plug and play, to some degree. He can hop into another team that's a contender, and they just say, Danielle, go get the quarterback, and he can go do that. So I could definitely see a scenario. Once again, he would be comp pick eligible, for 2025, would fetch a probably a 3rd round pick. So the compensation has to be at least more than that, to make that trade happen. But you'd save on cap for the rest of the year, and you'd make your pass rush worse, and so your defense wouldn't be as good, and all these things. So if you're I made a point yesterday to say that the Kevin O'Connell and the team are never going to tank, but the front office can look into how do we position ourselves best for next year, and that might involve removing players that make the team worse, but the team is still going to try to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's hope that they do get up this week. I mean, I guess depending what side you're on, right? But we all want to see the Vikings win. I mean, that's always better when they're winning than when they're losing. So let's get to predictions. I did not do this Chat GBT weird like
That's fine with
thing
me.
that Matt does because he's good with that, and I'm just not that savvy. So let's get to predictions here, and then we'll wrap up the show here. So this weekend, do or die game. What do you think happens? Score prediction here.
It's so tough because Justin Jefferson's such a big factor, and you don't know how it's going to come into. And the Bears have been playing well. I'd like to think, just with all the pieces, all the strength, all the talent on the team, I always look at it and say, like, the Vikings are just a so much more talented team than the Bears, and they know their season's on the line. And I think that the Bears aren't really counting on making a season out of anything. So I think the Vikings want it more. So I will predict the Vikings. I still don't think they get the offense going. Or why would I expect them after Justin Jefferson? So I'm going to say 28-24 Vikings.
28-24. Perfect. You know, I hope you're right. I'm feeling negative right now. And I watched what the Bears did on Thursday night against the Commanders, which I think we're a much better team than the Commanders, but wouldn't say our defense is. Our defense actually, I think the Commanders have a really good defense, and they didn't play very well, obviously, against Justin Fields, but I think he's found his groove. I think he's found his confidence, and I don't know if we can keep up without Justin Jefferson. So I'm going to go pretty much the exact opposite of what you said and say 2024 Bears. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're right. Yeah. But unfortunately, that's I think where we're at right now.
I think that we always want to root for a Vikings victory, as you said, but we might look back and say a loss to the Bears this weekend might be the best thing that would help our franchise in a long time, especially if it's the thing that helps us, trade some assets and help us really focus on next year and really kind of sets us up to maybe get that high draft pick, to get that quarterback. So, I'm just thinking, big picture, long term, taking my fandom out of it. If you're just objectively look at the thing that's going to move the needle to get the Vikings closest to, doing what they need to do to be more competitive in future years, a Bears victory might not be all that bad.
Nope. It's there's what was it? The Texans. I mean, technically they're thankful, right?
Yes,
Because they end up slipping to 2. Maybe they would have taken Stroud anyway, but every win matters one way or another, good or bad. So we'll see where it takes us, but I'm hoping you're right, because I'm much happier on Sundays when the Vikings have won. So
for sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining tonight, Nick. I appreciate it. Thanks for all who are listening right now, either live or on the podcast here. We really appreciate you. If you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe. We have a lot of great content throughout the week with, Matt, and Miles. They do a kind of rundown on Monday mornings. We got Nick on Tuesdays going over more big picture stuff, which is fantastic. We always have this show on Wednesday nights, and then we do the final score every week during or right after the game. And then every now and then we get Flip to come in here and do a little 15 minutes with Flip, which we enjoy. So please like and subscribe. We have a lot of great content. We want to keep all of you here because there's a lot of great content for you to listen to. So please do that. And Skol Vikings.
Skol.